Bam. So we have a project to help the Drake House with their pantry. They are currently emailing spreadsheets back and forth to keep track of their inventory in their food pantry. And what they want to do is move it from, they send a list of items to the food pantry and they just have it all packed up and ready to go to a grocery store-like thing. And so we're going to help facilitate that by creating a point of sale system sort of that will scan out those inventory items as they're brought to the checkout counter, so that the budgeting aspect of the Drake House, the budgeting development side of the Drake House can be facilitated so that, you know, they'll have an average price for things. And so we'll have to, when we scan in like a box of rice, no matter what kind of rice it is, we're going to group it into a bucket called rice. And that way they know how much rice boxes they have. We won't get too fancy to start with, but they may need to know how many ounces something is at some point. And so they may need to say like, I need a 22-ounce box of rice and not a 16-ounce box of rice. And so that might get more complicated in the future, but that's all on the back end. I'm teaching front end web development, so let Gregory and I and myself deal with that complexity. And you'll just call APIs to scan things in and out. And we're going to talk about APIs today, and how they work. Sir. I don't know. I'm going to contact her real quick, because I went over there and asked for something under Caroline Nolan. They said nothing was there, so I'm going to ask her for our confirmation email. And if she can forward that, that would be excellent. I think she did. They didn't want to divulge. It's very odd. Usually, like they're like, "Oh yeah, we have an order."
Yeah, last time when I got here,
they were bringing it in. Yes. Yeah.
I'll bring it in. I'm like, okay.
If not, I can go and order food, but
I just didn't want if she spent personal money on the thing.
right. That's the thing is I don't want it to go to waste at all. Definitely not. So I will. Oh. There it is. Good morning, Sherika. I sent a Slack message to Caroline. So we're working on that. So yeah, we have a project, and we'll have more details as we move forward in the weeks. But that's the capstone project. Is we'll have a inventory app for. We'll have an inventory app for the Drake House's food pantry. Since right now they're just emailing around spreadsheets, and I don't like that. No. Okay, so today we're going to talk about browser APIs. And what browser APIs are is there's a suite of tools. Oh, he said it'd be ready at 9:30. Cool. One second, folks. All right, so browser APIs. So last week we did FizzBuzz. Week before that we did arrays and objects. Now we're going to put it all together and make a little application. It's a tiny application. It's a guest book application. You're going to have a page that shows a list of names, and you're going to have an input field so that people can add to that list of names. You're then going to find a way to store that list of names so that they don't go away when you close the browser. And then you're going to find a way to store those names off of your computer so that it's the same for everybody who comes to visit the website. Okay? So we're going to do this in 3 parts. We're going to start with putting lists of names on a web page. So you remember we did HTML at the very, very beginning. I sort of went pretty quick over it. Today we're going to show you how JavaScript and HTML interact. And that's with a browser API called the DOM, or the Document Object Model. What the document object model is a JavaScript object with some functions that allow you to model and view the HTML document. Okay, so when you have an HTML document, you've got tags, you've got attributes, and you've got children. So I don't know if I was going over this at any point, but you can model an HTML document as a JavaScript object, right? So let's take a look here. Let's say this is our document, right? So this is the top level object. Everything inside of the HTML document can be put here. So let's say we have an H1 tag. And inside of that H1 tag, we have an array of other elements that are all the children of that element. And actually, it's going to look more like this because you might have attributes on this object, and we're going to call this property children, right? So Shift-F. So what this will look like in HTML is you'll have a document, HTML, and then you'll have an H1 tag. Doesn't want to do the Emmet abbreviations in JavaScript. So you have this H1 tag, and inside of this H1 tag, you'll have a child. Here's a P tag. Whoops. Right, so you have your P tag, and that's going to have some properties as well. This is an imperfect representation. I can actually just show you what this would look like in the HTML DOM. So let me go ahead and do that. Let me pull up this right here. Let me open in a file explorer. It's going to open up down here. I'll double click it. It'll open up and we can view it together. Okay, up here. All right, so this is our Hello World page. We haven't done anything with this in a while. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open the console, and I'm going to type console.log document. Document is a global JavaScript variable that refers to the current HTML page. So you'll see it's an HTML document object. And if you open this up, it has a bunch of properties. It's got a URL, it's got an active element, it's got an adopted style sheet, it's got an HTML all collection. That was sort of what I was trying to model when I showed it to you. There's a character set. There's all sorts of properties. Document also has some useful functions, right? So let's do document.get element by ID. And we can look at the content of any element by its ID in HTML. So if you remember back in our HTML class portion, in our index HTML, one of these had an ID, right? So this is the H1 Hello World ID. So if we copy this, and we come back here, and we paste that in here, you'll see it return to the H1 element. And you'll also notice as I'm hovering over this, the browser's sort of overlaying some lines on it. That shows you what element is selected. You can also select an element by clicking this button here, and it'll allow you to select an item visually by mousing over it. So it's called the inspector. Let me go back to the console though. So now I've got this element. I can do this again, but I can save the element to a variable. So I can say this is my element, right? Const element equals document.get element by ID. So this is a function in the document object that returns the element in the HTML page. And once I have that, I can look at what's in element, right? I can open this up. And there's a whole bunch of properties, like it has an attributes property list, right? It's got a base URI. It's got a child element count. We can look at every piece of HTML inside of this upper HTML node, right? So we can sort of traverse this tree, right? So a tree is a software term as well as an actual, like there's trees outside. But it's sort of like an actual tree, right? So you have nodes, which are sort of like points on a tree. And as a tree grows, it gets branches and it gets other leaves, right? So this is where the child nodes is like a tree. It's a list of other elements that may have other child nodes. And so you're at a trunk of sorts when you're looking at a child nodes container. Does that make sense? I know that I've sort of gone in the weeds about the data structure of it. We can do some cool stuff with this. Once we have the element, we can change inner text by just assigning the inner text property a new value. Oops, extra quote. We can also set the inner HTML to have a p tag on it instead of just regular text. And now you'll notice the style changed because I applied different styles to different types of elements. Okay. So this is really going to be essential when you want to build applications, is being able to change the content of a page dynamically. We're going to go over React at some point, which is the framework we'll be using. I'm only going over this so you know what React is kind of doing under the covers at a high level. We're not going to be doing things this way for a long time. We're just going to do it for one application, and then we'll move on to React because React is a nicer way to do some of these things. But it's definitely good to know the document object model so you can break out of React when you need to and write some JavaScript that's just vanilla and doesn't require React. Okay, so now that we have that down, we're going to change the structure of our HTML page a little bit to facilitate this idea of a guest book. So we're going to call this guest book. And we're not going to make this an H1. We're just going to make this a div because I don't want any fancy styles on it. I'm just going to get rid of this piece. So that's just going to be guest book. Need to have the right closing tags as well. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change branches back to master, and we're going to do this on master. Yes. All right, and now I'm going to swap to master. Stash and checkout. Not gonna bother. Okay. There we go.
Question, this part that we just selected, the document. We don't need it, but it's not.
The JavaScript is above.
Like what we wrote last week.
Yeah.
It's just hard.
What we're doing today, you don't need that. Just the HTML that you have.
Okay, so we just need that.
Yeah, that's, you just need to in your HTML,
Yes, I changed it.
you need to be, all right, yeah, that's all you need to do.
Okay, but that part here, like what we did.
Yeah, this right here is just to display what JavaScript it actually is, but you won't need this even.
Okay,
That was just a representation. It's showing to show what it actually.
okay.
But in a minute, I assume you're gonna be.
We're gonna- Yes. Yes.
So you will need to be in JavaScript. You can get rid of that unless you already commented it, so you can have it, so you can see what it looks like. But this structure right here isn't going to be important.
Sorry, folks. I'm just getting the latest changes. Did you get the? Yeah. Let me go ahead and see if she sent me the email, and I'll forward it to you. Yeah, here it is. All right, I'll forward. So it'll be forward.
Okay.
All right, so forward. Dustin. All right, should be in your email shortly.
Cool.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. So I just pulled back down the changes. So this is gonna look more like what we want. So let's go branch. We're gonna call this app guest book. Okay, now we're on a different branch. So what we're gonna do now is I want you to clear out your app.js. And then actually, I'll just do this and then you can follow along. E equals guest. All right, so to make sure this is all working, we're going to come into our app.js and we're going to say document get element by ID guest book. Let's say this is const element, right? And then we're going to say element dot inner text equals hello world. So now if we refresh this page, we should see hello world in kind of small letters. Yeah, there we go. So now we have a way to change the content from JavaScript in our app.js file. I didn't mean to open another instance of Visual Studio Code. Get rid of the U. There we go. Okay, so what I want to do now is I'm going to create a guest book input, and I don't think we went over inputs. But at the bottom of this div, we're going to have a form, and we're going to have an input of a type called text. And what this will do is this will put a text box on the screen. Right, so let's do this. So you'll see there's a text box there. It's kind of ugly. We can put this in a div that is also of a type of centered container, and I hope that will do what I think it will do. Otherwise, we're going to move forward with a ugly looking page and we'll fix it later. Yeah. No. I could use
I
Bootstrap.
was just asking, is this a different container, a thing that already exists?
Yeah, I made a.
Oh, I don't see you.
Yeah, it's in it's Flexbox. Flexbox is basically the
Yeah.
native replacement for Bootstrap. It's just a lot more obtuse.
What were you trying to make it do?
I want to make it go to the next line, so it's not just like this. But I also kind of don't care because I'm just going to show the inputs right now.
Yeah, you need to change it to column and have the hello world.
Yep. With Flexbox, yeah, I know. I'll do that in a second. The input type has some attributes that allow us to label them. Thank you. Placeholder. So this is name. I would like some. So you'll see when we added a placeholder attribute, whatever text we put in the placeholder will show up as the empty text. So right now, this is where you'll put your name. And then we're going to have a second input of a type date. Type date. I think that's the type. This is your birthday. Oops.
And your cursor seems to be jumping around.
Yeah, I'm hitting the touchpad.
Do you not use a closing tag for input?
No, input is a self-closing element. In fact,
You even need the backslash with the
nope. Nope. So you notice when I did input type of date, it gave me this fancy date picker. But you can also just type in your birthday. So 07211992. So I was born on a Tuesday in 1992, and my name is Jonathan Lane. Now we need a submit button to pass this information back to JavaScript. So input type button. And inside the button, you can put submit. And that is another way. Is that how that works? No, it's button, right? Yeah, it's button. That's the way you actually do. All right, so this button will now call the submit form function when we click it. This is something that is a part of the browser APIs called events. Events allow you to tell JavaScript that something happened in the browser. You click a button and specify an on-click action, and it will call this function. Right now, this function doesn't exist, so it's not going to do anything. But we can define it. If you remember how we did the functions last time, submit form. That's a function body, and then we can do console.log. We're going to say the button's been clicked. Now we're going to see what will happen when we refresh. And again, it's kind of looking ugly, so I'll quickly move this down at some point. But if we hit submit, you can see button's been clicked. Now what's happening right now is it's actually posting back to a non-existent web server. And that's the default function of a button, is to submit a form when it is in a form. So to make it not do that, you notice how it's like refreshing the page. To make it not do that, we need to specify an event, right? So by default, HTML will pass an argument to this function called event. So we're going to say it's an event. And you can call it anything you want. So that's the event. We're going to log the console.log event. And we'll see what that does. It should be an object that has a bunch of properties on it. We hit submit. Let me refresh the page. Goodness. All right, so submit. E is not defined. I'm missing something. Event, I believe, is more complicated than that. So
You have to add something there. Not sure. That one's more down.
So you remember in JavaScript, you have an arguments object. Let me go back and just do this piece. So if I specify the function like that, it's still going to find it and execute it, but it'll pass whatever the browser wants it to be in there to it. So you can, some functions can be called without parentheses depending on who's doing the calling. So what we're doing is we're telling the browser to call this function. We're not calling this function. The browser is going to call this function. So all it needs is the name, and it'll go and pass the event to that function. And then it'll also find the function and then call it. So let's go ahead and see what that will do. I'm pretty sure we're on the right track. Let's hit submit. I got nothing. Did I take out the log for arguments?
You aren't having an event, right?
I'm,
You can pass it there still.
yeah. I think I do actually have to pass event to it.
Here.
Yeah.
You had to leave it like you just said so they can call.
I don't know. I'm looking at Stack Overflow now and it says to do the opposite.
All right, I know you got your demo.
Arguments is not defined. Interesting. All right, so now we're going to try something else. What we're going to do now is we're going to grab the button in JavaScript. And once the document is loaded, we're going to add an event listener. So event. Right, so now we have this function. We're going to say submit button dot add event listener. We're going to say I want to listen to click. And once click is called, I want you to call the submit form. Why are you in the way? Goodness, I can't see. We're going to call the submit form function. Maybe we'll be able to get an event now. Oof. Arguments is not defined. So let's just get rid of that and do events. Okay. I think that's because it won't actually find the function if you just put it there as like, that's all there is. So you do have to do it. Best practice is to do it this way, I guess. Again, React makes this a lot nicer. So once we get into React, it'll start making more sense. But basically what you're saying is you're finding the button in JavaScript because it's already loaded in the HTML page. So you're querying the HTML page saying, hey, give me the button. And once you get the button, you're going to set a event listener on a click event. So whenever somebody clicks that button, you're saying run this function. Okay. Now, it's still refreshing the page when I click it. The reason why is because that event that we just sent is still going to do the default action. So to prevent it from doing the default action, we have to go into the function and call event.prevent default. And that'll prevent the default action from happening, which is the page refresh. Right? So if we hit submit, it'll refresh the page, but then we hit it again, and now we can just hit it all day long, and it won't refresh. Now, what we want to do is we're going to update the HTML with the names and birthday of these two people. So now we need to get the birthday input, B-day input, and this is the name input. And again, these names are arbitrary. You can name them what you want, but you will have to use them in the JavaScript. So make sure you name them something you can remember or copy easily. And then inside here, we're going to say, all right, I want you to find the name field, document, get element by ID, pass in this name input. Right, so now we have the name field. And you do want to make sure that you put the event prevent default as the first action, because otherwise it might go, the function you're calling might go so slow that it'll do the default action anyway. I'm not actually sure that that's how that goes, but so all we have to do with this name field now is get the value attribute. So name field dot attribute, not attribute, value. It's value, right? Well, let's see what happens. It's not complaining. All right, so now if I type in Jonathan Ling, it should log my name to the console. Button's been clicked. Maybe I didn't save. It's saved. Maybe I just need to refresh. Refresh. So if I hit submit, yeah, there we go. There's my name. I can change this to Sherika. What is your name, right, Sherika? Oh dear, where's my mouse? Yes, Sherika Robinson. And if I hit submit, now it says Sherika Robinson. So we're able to capture the name, and we can do something similar to the date field. We just copy the B-day input, and this becomes B-day field. We can also log out day field value. And I don't know when Sherika's birthday is, so we'll just say it was a couple of, Sherika Robinson was done twice. Why is that? Name field, name input, B-date input. Did I not refresh the page again? Is that what happened? I'm so used to it refreshing the page when yeah, there we go. So now we have the birth date. So now we need to save these fields into a JavaScript data structure, right? So if you remember when we did arrays and objects, I was telling you about how you can make sort of an Excel spreadsheet with arrays of objects. So that's what we're going to do, is create an array of objects of guests. So we're going to have a guest equal array. Right now it's empty, right? So we want to start empty, but when we add a guest, what we want to do is say guest equals, and now we get to decide whether we want to put it at the top of the list or the bottom of the list. I want to put it at the top of the list so that as guests come in, they sort of get pushed down, right? So it'll be in order of where they showed up, right? So what we're going to do is create an object here, and we're going to say name is name field dot value, and we're going to value, and then we're going to say birthday is bday field dot value. All right, so save that. Okay, so now we're creating a new array, but we're not putting guests back in. We're just creating a new array with one entry. To add it back in, JavaScript has this special syntax where you just do ... guests. So that'll take the old value of guests and put it into this array. So you're basically appending to this array. So you're saying, all right, take the old guest, put it at the end. Here's the new guest, put it at the beginning. Now, the other way you can do this, in fact, the other way you have to do this, let's say we made this a const, like we probably ought to. What you can do instead is you can use push or pop. Actually, I think it's push. Yes, push. Push is a method or a function on the array once it's created. And we can, this puts it at the end of an array. So we want to do, what is it? Pop. Yeah, pop removes it. Push puts it at the end. Shift, what does shift do? I think shift adds, no, that removes the first element. Unshift, slice, reduce. I don't remember if there was one. Is there one? I don't think you can do that easily.
Unshift.
Unshift? Oh. Okay, so unshift is how you put in a new guest at the front of the array. So now we'll do name field, dot value. And this is just so you're aware of different ways of working with these objects. You might have a personal preference, and there's pros and cons to each method of doing things. But that'll add a new element with those fields to the array, right? So now, instead of logging buttons been clicked, we can just log the guests. right? So let's add Sherika. Let's add Sherika a bunch of times. Oh my goodness, what? I didn't click it 8 times. So fun fact, you can add the same click event twice. So on click, if you still have it there and you do the document add event listener, it'll add it twice. And that's why when I was clicking, it was adding it twice. So now I'm just adding it once. Well, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah. So now we have an array of guests. Now we need to display them in the HTML. So we have, if you remember, we have this guest book ID. And now we're going to do an unordered list. And we're going to call this a guest book. Oops. We're going to call this a guest book list. And now in our app.js, we can get the inner guest list. Document get element by ID, guest list. This guest book list. So a list of guests or a list of books that guests have. Okay, so now we have the inner guest list. Now we can do a for each loop over the guests and say for const guest in guests. Log guest. Okay. Refresh the page. So that's going to do the index. So we need to do for const guest of, and that'll log the actual object. Okay. I'll take a pause to get some coffee and we'll come back to this because we're getting close to the point where we're anything's claimed.
Yeah, no, I saw it. With the way I covered it, really different. It's kind of a big something like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but just to say that it's not getting fun. That was fast.
Yeah, just.
Yeah, it's not getting
Not over. That should be about the errors. Yeah, so maybe just clean that in the setup. Now, I'm very.
I have
Okay.
And then I.
Yeah, I'm not sure why that was happening, because like Jonathan was able to have an event on both. It wasn't good, but it worked. But she had to remove the part.
Yeah.
Because the part of it, because it might be like, that's not good practice, you know. Whereas Jonathan was allowed to, because he's using firearms.
Um,
Yeah, that's one thing you might get annoyed with as you learn JavaScript is
Some browsers do things a little differently than other browsers. From a very limited experience, and because mostly I use Mac, Safari is extremely strict on what you can do, and everyone else is a little more. Okay, you want, just rip it in. We can't eat that, so it's you, Jonathan.
You made the last spot.
The sporting.
The other one's in the end.
Oh,
I thought the anywhere was just, I can't find your.
this is just programming. We're guests define.
This, yeah. This is the only person.
Sure, but you have to define it somewhere.
Yeah, I'll wait until more.
Can you scroll up?
Can someone scroll up? Can someone scroll down?
You can't just say it. Okay. Okay. I just thought those four things would make for those.
Sure, because I'm here twice.
Just paying really good attention. If you use,
It's your super fun, so yeah, I remember this.
If you want to. We may have to get a quick and dirty UI up. And then
it's just,
add the point of sale.
it's just a lot more.
I love Svelte. It's great.
Yeah, it's a lot. Well, no, what I'm saying is a lot more similar to what we've already shown
Mhm.
than React is.
It has a compile.
I know it's great.
It's great.
The big part tells you when you got things wrong. And it has a full library of animation, and everything just built into it. And I think it even has like things like a similar thing to like Redux and everything built in.
Yeah,
The stores.
all variables are that way by default. They're all reactive.
Well, no, if I did web, that's what I would want to do. Are there jobs for development?
I don't think so.
Well, I guess we better teach
We're going to teach people how to learn, hopefully, so that if they want to learn Svelte or Vue or Angular or anything else.
Some jobs for you, right?
Angular's more,
Oh, really?
yeah, Angular pairs with .NET well. And by that, I mean, that's sort of the pairing that's happened. Whether it pairs well is up for debate, I guess, but.
I thought that Angular, React, and Vue were easy to find jobs for. But the React being the highest. Like,
React is easy to find a job for. Angular is pretty easy to find a job for, although I think they really want you to be more experienced with Angular, like more enterprisey developer.
which I found you actually have to be less experienced. Yeah. They have more.
You just have to look good in a polo shirt, probably.
There you go.
I don't think I look good in a polo shirt.
Right. On and on. It's weird that React's website still everything is class components.
Yeah. Right. Really? The React website is still class components?
Like I'm saying, what they're showing you, all the tutorials are still class components.
On the React's website.
Yeah, like this is the tutorial.
Oh my goodness.
And I was
That's
like,
not
I don't
right.
want any of this. This is.
Okay. How's everybody doing? Keeping up so far? Does it make sense? I'm adding elements to the HTML and then referencing them in the JavaScript.
In your CSS, you have something called name.
It looks like, oh wait, I don't have that either. Oh, oops.
That's what I'm wondering. I haven't heard you name this, Jonathan. So you should be showing up. He doesn't have to be. We're displaying. Flex.
So I have a question. Is what's happening right now over there related to just getting the inputs on the screen yet? You're centering the.
Yeah. She can't get them on the screen.
Okay, that's important. You want that.
Yeah, I was just trying to make sure that it wasn't defined as like pushing them off the screen.
Okay, that makes sense.
You know, I'm not just talking about sending them. Like, let's say refresh your page, save this. And just save this. And then you go back to your page and reload it. Can you go here? Oh, it's showing up for a second. See that? Go into the console and see if there's anything. Okay. Yeah, this is weird. You take a look.
Sure.
It's showing up for her input struck for like half a second and then vanish for a little bit.
Okay, so did you figure out complete? Yes. Adding clicks in the form. So, go ahead and hit Control A and then Control/. Yes. And save that. Go back to your web page. Just wanna- okay, so it is something with the JavaScript that's causing too much. There you go.
Issue.
So go back to your JavaScript. Do Control A, Control/. Scroll. Element.intertext. Real. Intertext is. Could you comment out element intertext? So save it. Okay, so what's happening is when you do that element intertext equals hello world, you're completely wiping out the HTML elements that make up. So go ahead and do HTML element. Now you can append that. Yeah, because so the guest book was the top level thing that you had. So if you're telling it in your HTML, you're telling it everything inside of it.
Because of where you had it. If you add it somewhere else, like if you made another div above this that didn't fit around, you could do that and it wouldn't matter.
So I have to close this one?
No, you won't do that because this wouldn't matter. Do that and then uncomment your code. Maybe you just forgot to close it. The one. There you go. And that is all the program. We just sort of did right now. I'm sure people looking at everything line by line and being like, oh.
Why is it not working?
And inviting a whole bunch of people to look at it and be like, why isn't it working? Everyone being like, we don't know.
Just a bias.
Flex direction column.
Yeah. So now I'm looking at something that has no bearing on getting it to show up in the page. We're gonna skip that. All right, so I've created this unordered list ID of guest book list. I'm referencing it in here now, right? So here's my inner guest list. And so what I want to do is I want to create a list item for each guest that says their name and their birthday. So list item is the LI element. I'll show you what it looks like here. So LI, close LI, and we can say we got a guest. So that's what a LI element looks like. So what we're going to do is create a list of LI elements. And how we're going to do that is we're going to do what's called a map. And what map will do is loop over a collection of items and transform each element to something else. So when I say mapping, what I mean is you're going to take object A and turn it into whatever object A finds in a lookup table. That's kind of what mapping sort of is, but we'll apply a mapping function instead, and I'll show you what that looks like. So we want to create a list of list item elements, right? That's what these LIs are. So to do that, we're going to get rid of this for loop, and we're going to say guests const list of guests equals guests.map. And it's going to take a callback function, and we're going to pass in each guest as it loops, right? So this syntax means we're going to loop over each guest in this array, and we're going to return something else based on that guest. So I'm going to open a li tag in some backticks to do some string interpolation. We're going to do the dollar open bracket and then close bracket, and we're going to say guest dot name dash guest dot birthday. All right, so now we have a list of guests, right? So all we have to do now is say inner guest list dot inner HTML equals list of guests. So let's see what this will do for us. Okay, so Jonathan Lang was born on 07/21/1992. We're going to submit this. That didn't do anything. Let's see why. I can't see anything. I want to see the HTML. There it is. Okay, so there's the centered container. There's the form. Where's the list? Hello world, centered container, submit button, form. I wonder if I put it in the wrong spot. Haha. I ran into the thing you were running into, Larissa. I don't want that to happen. What I'll do is I'll put okay. Now our unordered list of guestbook list will not be deleted when we run our JavaScript. Okay. Now I can say, I am Jonathan Lang. And I was born on 1882. Yeah. Hit submit, and there's my name. And then you can add any other amount of people you want to. Let's go to August 8th, 2022. Why is there a comma? I am so confused. Do you know why there's a comma, Dustin?
So, let's automatically create a moment for items.
Do they, and then default it on? Are you using it in a list?
No. Yes, I am using a list. So you're correct. Thank you, Tara. So we are creating a new list of these elements. We're not joining them together based on nothing. So what we can do at the end is just type .join. And now it's fixed. Now we have a list of guests that is. But now you'll notice all my guests went away. I didn't want that. I just wanted them to look different. So now I got to put all my stuff back in. 0721. It would be great if I could save all of that. 2001, sure. Did I not refresh? Did I not save? What's going on? Am I not joining on anything?
You have to join on comma.
I don't think I have to join on comma. I may have to join on a white space. Yeah. So let's try that. Let's try joining on a white space character or an empty string. I believe you do have to join on a separator. Otherwise, it'll just be like, yeah, just join it on comma. Which is not explicit. I wish it was. There we go. Okay, now the next step is, well, okay, so now that you built this application, right, with me, what do you think are some things we should do to improve this? If you went to somebody's house and they had this on their wall with like a touch screen for you to enter your name, what would you think of it? You're like, it's kind of janky, right? Like, why are these over here and why is this over here? What's going on? Yeah, it also randomly says hello world. If I refresh the page, suddenly all of their guests are gone. They probably don't want that, right? Because then somebody who's like being real, really mean could just refresh the page and they lose all their guests. That wouldn't be so
Or
great.
it freezes up. And then like, I should refresh things. Works again.
Yeah. Maybe they run into an infinite loop in their code and everything's frozen up and you have to refresh the page. And then all of a sudden their guests are gone. So with the browser, we have a couple of options. Depending on how much time we have today, I'll go over at least one of them. And then we'll go over another one later on. There's local storage, which isn't used very often. Local storage is a way to save data to just this browser. Okay, so if I just had one application running that I didn't want anybody else to access from anywhere else, which is kind of not the point of the web. When you're doing web development, you want to just be able to I can go to a website and there it is, and all my data is there. That's kind of the fun and beauty of the web, is that it's available, highly available to anyone who wants to see it. So with local storage, that's the example we're going to skip over, I think. We're going to go to HTTP requests. So now we're going to talk a little bit about HTTP requests. So when you go to a browser and you type in google.com, what that's doing is that's sending an HTTP request to Google servers. And it finds Google servers by doing what's called a DNS lookup. And that's how it finds where Google is. But once it finds where Google is, it goes and says, hey, Google server, give me the Google homepage. And the server responds, okay, I'm here to give you the Google homepage. Here it is. And it sends it back. And it does that over what's called HTTP. It stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. HTML is Hypertext Markup Language. HTTP is Hypertext Transfer Protocol. So they together, that's what makes up what we know as the web browser. Like, this is the web, right? So to get data from a server, right? So with the modern web, we don't want That's an error. It didn't want me opening the console. Okay, so with the modern web, we don't usually want to wait on things spinning, right? So when you go to like a slow web page, like the Softguild web page, sometimes it takes a long time to load. You'll see it's loading, Okay. And if any of you want to work on this web page, you're welcome to. We'll do that later. But yes, so that web page took a little bit of time to load because the server's a little slower than Google servers. I don't have the money to run a Google scale and speed server. So Google's really fast, some websites are really slow, but when you build a website, you don't want it to feel slow. So when it feels slow, there's a couple of things you can do to make it go faster. And one of those things is render the page immediately and then load the data in the page later. That's where you'll see like spinners on a page. Sometimes it feels like it's slow, but at least the page is responsive and you can click and things happen. So how that's achieved is with an API in the browser called Fetch. And what Fetch does, and this is a newer standard, it used to be called XML HTTP request. So if you see people using XML HTTP request or XHR, don't get confused, you can just use Fetch in the browsers today. So Fetch, what you do is you type in a URL, and then you pass it a callback function with a response. Res. And then you can log it out to the console. So Fetch returns what's called a promise. What happened? Okay. So Fetch returns a promise, and a promise represents something that will happen in the future. If you remember, I was telling you in JavaScript, you can't do anything in the background for a long time because otherwise it'll freeze up the UI and you won't be able to click. It'll just seem unresponsive to anything you do. So what JavaScript did to get around that is they have these objects that sort of get a little bit of milliseconds of CPU time every now and again, right? So it's like, it's not enough to make the page feel unresponsive, but the page does stop in microseconds, right? So the promise, what a promise does is a promise returns the future state of a value. And I had the syntax wrong. You do fetch and then a dot then, and then you give it a function to do something with it. So what I'm running into here is Google doesn't allow me to access their servers just willy-nilly. I have to have the correct permissions. So one page that won't do that is example.org or example.com, right? So perfect page for this, example.com.
Is it an HTTPS site?
No, I'm sorry. Cross-origin request is a browser protection. So Firefox doesn't actually allow you to make fetch requests from sites that are different. And that's to protect the user from downloading malicious JavaScript and having someone say, hey, go get a script that's going to take all their information. So that's
You can do VS Code.
I can.
Masking.
Oh, you just have like an HTTP client. Yep. Is that good?
Yes.
Yeah.
You have to have that. You don't. What I'm saying, governments can't use fetch in Visual Studio Code.
I can use it in Node.
You can't use it.
I don't know what you mean.
Like you're having trouble showing them in the console.
Oh, yes. You're right. Right. Sorry. Okay. So, right, we can go fetch https example.com, and that's a double forward slash. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna say at the end of that dot then, we're gonna say res console.log res.
That's what I meant, sorry.
Sometimes I try and do things the hard way, you know? All right, so if I hit Control R, it's still not going to do it. Course access control allow.
I think so, it- I think we're in both.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
A little bit. I think I wasn't sure if the whole room was supposed to be that. It is, I just think can do, it's, the.
It shouldn't matter.
I don't know, cause the last time I forgot so far, but didn't change it, cause I feel like the automatic stuff tried to do this.
Well, yeah, it should still show up, but it just. Yes, I think this, right? Yeah, and you didn't add this last line, which is the inner guest, this dot inner text equals list of guests. And you also want to do inner HTML, so that way. Oh, inner HTML, right.
The inner HTML and inner text are different text. I think it will escape the HTML, so it'll just look
Oh, you
like.
like it, you want your variable inner guest list. Self to ask instead of ready to move forward.
Yeah, let me, I'm gonna do some things behind the scenes to get this example going, because I have
So why is that not working? Shouldn't you be able?
I need to add a request header
Uh,
to the
fetch.
fetch. So to do that, we just do, I think we can do header.
Just will be money, yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
It's easy to work right at the tree.
Okay.
Right? Firefox, you know, edge. Yeah.
Okay, that's not what I want to do. I just need to do HTTP. Is that why this is not working? That would be awful.
That doesn't seem right.
Yeah, that's not. The same origin policy disallows reading the remote resource or its requested.
Well, to do a, can you not do a get to get something?
That's what I'm trying to do. The fetch is a get.
Oh,
By default, it's a get if you don't pass a body.
uh,
So I'm really struggling with why this is failing.
try a different browser. You see if it's just Firefox's.
It actually might be, because they actually implement the spec for cores. Open dev tools. Well, like I hit the key to open the dev tools. Like I don't know why you're upset with me.
Again?
Yeah.
So it's because I don't have an origin header on. So I may need to add an origin header. Set origin request header in browser in Firefox. That's what I want to do. Can I add origin? In short, you cannot. So when I was learning this, it was kind of the Wild West and you could get from anywhere. Now it is quite hard to get from anywhere. So, which is good in some ways because now malicious actors can't do things in your browser to attack you.
Would it be like an open API?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to find.
There's a Pokemon that's meant for, at least there used to be. a
Pokemon
for
open API. Poke API.
I believe so. I could be wrong, but I believe so.
The problem is I don't want GraphQL. I just want.
Yeah,
I want to get Ditto. See if this will work. So the problem though is that when I'm doing the file, when I'm opening this up as a file, it's not setting an origin. And if the web server, usually web servers will default to looking at the origin, but right now it's not because I'm not running on a web server. So it's kind of, so if I had localhost, oh, there we go. Totally worked. Thank you, Dustin. The Poke API worked.
Yeah, they made it just so people could use the things.
So I got a response back. And there's a readable stream body. So what you have to do to get the JSON out of this is call the .json function on the res. So it's res.json. Right? When we refresh, we should see some information about Ditto. Oh, I have to, sorry, I have to promise myself a promise, right? So res.json returns a promise as well. So if I do this, it's not going to work. So what I have to do is do .then res.json.then console.log. And what I'm doing here is I'm just saying, take the first argument from this then callback and pass it to console.log. And that way I don't have to write out the full syntax just to log the response to the console. There we go. So here's an object with information about the Pokemon Ditto. I'm setting up what's called a JSON bin. And what that's going to do is allow us to create a collection. Ooh, what is this? So I'm going to create a bin, right? And I'm just going to have an array of objects to start with. Format this. Can I format this? Save bin. Fit. Wait, I can't edit this. I don't want it to be private. I don't want it to be private. Okay, so I'm going to save this, and I'm going to copy the view. So copy the bin URL. So yep, I have a JSON bin now. So let me see if I can use this to get the data instead of the Ditto API. I hope I don't get the course. There we go. Okay, so now I just have this array of empty objects, right? So it's an empty object. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to read in this list. Okay, so we're going to say we're going to fetch at the very beginning of the document. And then everything else will happen in this callback function. Sorry, in the second callback function where we actually get the body. Then this becomes guest. And we can move this to the bottom. And now we're all good. Okay, so what I'm doing now is I'm going and getting the guests from a web server. Okay? Got it? So now when I go to this page, redeclaration of formal parameter guess. So I can't have this here. So now guess is just an array, right? So I also want the guess to show up as soon as we get there. So, but I also want it recalculated. So I'm going to take this and put this, copy and paste it and put it up here. And what I'm going to do is also set this, right? So now we're fetching the guests and we're immediately displaying them. There are none because it's not a function. That's right. So I need to grab guest.record as guests. So we can JSON.record or an empty array. Cool. So now I have an object that's just empty, right? So that's why it says undefined, undefined, because I put an empty object in there. Now we need to update the guests once we submit the list, okay? So what I'm going to do real quick is go back to my JSON bin and edit it. I want to edit this. Take out bin cannot be blank. Okay, so I guess I'll just put my birthday in it. Name, Jonathan, name, birthday. 7, 21, 1992. So let me update this. And if I refresh the page, invalid JSON encountered. How is that invalid?
You're just trying to get this out.
Sorry about this. Should be ready soon. Edit. Update. Is it because I'm using double quotes instead of single quotes? Pretty sure that's not how this works.
Does it matter that you have an extra semicolon?
I didn't use that. Like, it would be nice if they told you what the problem was. Like, I'm having trouble on their website creating anything, which is really annoying. I didn't done this last night. Oh, I wonder if they probably want the keys quoted. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's fine. I'm not sure where you're.
You know how you have how it's invalid JSON if it's not like quoted? Keys aren't quoted.
Yeah, keys in JSON, it's they call it JavaScript object model, but you can't actually write it like a JavaScript object.
Right.
I can't see what you're doing though, I guess.
No, you were a good rubber duck. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, okay, because it's
Yeah.
like nothing is happening on the screen.
Okay, now I have my birthday in there. So now when I refresh the page, we'll get my birthday. Okay, and then when we add, let's see, Sharika 01 2000. Submit. You'll see that happens. But then when I refresh the page, Sharika has gone away. So what we need to do is update the backend, right? So where I'm saving the JSON, and I'll show you what this is. This is a cool tool called JSON bin. You can do some free operations with it, but it allows you to create just JavaScript objects, and you can return them to and from your browser. All right. So you can like save data and update data. So let's go ahead and update with fetch. So fetch also, I think it's, can you do a put with fetch? Hang on. All right, all right, let's see if you can do a put fetch. All right, so the fetch API allows you to get and push back data. So you can send data back to the server, right? So we have this JSON bin that we need to update. And let me go ahead and see API JSON put update bins. JavaScript ES6. So what we're going to do when we submit the form is we're also going to update the API. So we need to create a what is called a request object. So we're going to call this a request object. And we're basically going to tell the fetch method, we're going to say that we want to put data, and body is JSON.stringify guests. Let me make sure this is working the way I expect it to. Put headers. So we're also going to add headers to say that the type of content is not just raw data. It is a JSON object. So we're going to say content type application / JSON. So that tells the server, hey, we're sending you some JSON. And here it is in the body. Then what we do is we find the URL we need to push to. So in the JSON bin API, that is update bins. So we're going to say, actually, it should just be the same URL as up here. Yeah, so v3b, and this is our bin ID. So we can actually take this and say bin URL, and then we just create a constant outside of here, bin URL equals that. And then we can use it down here in our other fetch, right? So in this fetch, we're going to call bin URL. Actually, can I? And then we're going to say request options. And then we're going to get a response. And we're going to do res.json.then console.log. We should just receive a, hey, we saved your object. We shouldn't receive anything important. But that should push it back. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to come over here, and you'll see we just have this one object in here. So let me go ahead and refresh my page over here. And I'm going to add Sherika 101/2001. Submit. Okay, it looks like we had a success. It returned the object. If I go back over to the bins, refresh this page, select the top bin. Should have been updated. Now, if I refresh this page, I should see Sherika again, right? Maybe. Oh, no, 5 more. Submit. Whoa. Hey. Okay. Was I trying to read it? Oh. Sorry about the fiddling I'm doing. I usually use wrappers over top of fetch. So I'm not actually super familiar with the API itself, but we're getting a success back. But I think if I go to my network tab, it'll show me whether I made a put request or not. Right, so I made a put request. It's the request had this is not helpful. Okay. Request had an object, had 2, right? So there's Sharika, there's myself. The response was private false, version 2. Did it actually update this time? Can I refresh you? No, it was not updated. So we need to look at the docs a little more. Content type, master key, Xband versioning, required. X master key is nothing but your core API access key. You'll need this key to access mostly any API endpoint on JSON bin. So I'm missing an API key. 404. Okay, so my dashboard. API keys. Can I get one? Oh wait, my X access key is here. So I'm going to rotate this one as soon as we're done. But now we need to put this in the headers and say this is an X access key. That. You shouldn't do this because now everybody has your access key. The way you would normally do this is you can have build time your variables that are injected into your code, or you can do environment variables if you're on a server. So, but that might work. Let's try that. Okay, that took a little longer. Let's see if it's actually updated now. I don't want to see what it will do. It doesn't say it's updated. I am so confused. Did I choose the wrong one? No. Oi, 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 oi. I was hoping this would go quick, but it does not seem to want to go quick. Help and support, updating bins. Wait, did I do? I did X access key, right? API keys. No access keys. That's X master key. I need to create an access key. You are only allowed to configure the access key for the bins read API only.
Install
Axios won't help.
I won't.
No.
When I did it, I guess I just did it in the same arrow and I could just access whatever I wanted to do.
Okay, do y'all want to take the next 5 minutes and create a quick Express server? That's what I'm going to do.
I don't know if anyone else has enough information to know whether they want to do that.
We're going to create a little backend real quick. It's going to be great. We're going to create a new file. We're going to call it server.js. We're going to we're gonna go to the back end. We're gonna do npm init.
Everyone have NPM?
Yes. No, they don't. I'm just frustrated is what's happening right now.
I need
So,
I need everyone to install NPM because
Right.
next week we're gonna be using.
yes, so now would probably be a good time to say, that's how APIs work, but
Let's,
JSON bin doesn't allow.
Let's teach everyone to install NPM because I'll need it for next week.
Right.
And
Okay.
then we will,
I feel we just so basic.
The JSON bin API that I was using, I thought I was gonna be able to update it. However, they have restricted access to updates. So now they don't allow, so this is part of programming, is you're gonna find that certain functionalities are no longer what you thought they were. When I was doing this free code camp curriculum and learning web development, I used JSON bin to learn how to use APIs. It was a really useful tool and a really easy tool. However, because of the web being the way it is and being more prone to vulnerabilities and hacking, they have made it
and
simpler.
learn how to use it from Pokemon.
Yes,
You just
so
don't-
well, you can't update Pokemon API.
Yeah, I guess you can't update it, but you can still learn. We don't necessarily have to do that. Just because it's a thing everyone does. No one here knows anything about what we're talking about. So you can just say how to get data out of it, how to manipulate the data on our end.
Right, yeah.
But since I think we only have.
Yeah, we only have a couple of minutes.
And to do any of the stuff he's trying to do, we will need NPM. So you'll need to install it. Because I'll need it next week and you'll need it for any of this.
And if you've installed Node.js before, there's node.js.dev, learn how to install Node.js. We're gonna go over this. I actually already have it installed, but I'll go over the steps at least. So here's how to install. Official packages are available for all major platforms at nodejs.dev/download. So I'm gonna post this link in the chat.
You're gonna use it, yes, so great. Because getting started on Facebook,
Recommends that.
well, they do, but what they recommend first is you writing everything in plain JavaScript. To get started.
Wait, really?
Yeah, not JSX, because then they're like, oh, and you can use JSX, install and do all this other things. So.
But you can use JSX in modern JavaScript. It just looks.
Telling you what Facebook is telling me, and I'm not an expert in React, so I'm
Okay,
what Facebook is telling me.
How is this not JSX?
It's got backticks, it's not JSX.
That's what JSX basically is. They just hacked it in. I'm not a fan.
Of JSX?
JSX is okay. I mean, so if you go to nodejs.dev/download, there are installers for each platform. LTS is the one you want. You can also do current. You can also do current, which is a later version. But LTS is the one that's supported. Basically, that's like the current version, right?
It's stable version.
Right.
Current is like, we don't know.
Not necessarily. Current is like, that will be the future LTS, right?
Yeah, but it also usually is like, we don't know 100%.
Right. So LTS just stands for long-term support. So that means that there will be bug fixes for this version for the next couple of years. So go ahead and type.
You have Node installed, right? Are you installing it?
All right. So once that's installed, just type npm.
In your.
No, not.
Oh, no, it's not.
That's an EP to continue.
Oh.
That's go back to the window there and then press EP. What that's gonna do is install a bunch of stuff. Yeah, it's Just have to say. So it's gonna install stuff and it needs to demonstrate.
I did this.
For Node, oh, yeah, you got it. And then in terminal, you can write which npm.
On Windows, you cannot, you just need to do npm dash dash version.
Which npm?
So you get that.
There you go, you have it.
Yeah.
I couldn't get in.
Oh, I
Yeah, so- Yeah, good.
That was not-
Everyone says select.
Yeah, we're gonna do this because it is easier to show you next week React setup and working in an environment than to go through all the steps to set up.
I will warn you, it's gonna do a lot of stuff you're not gonna know anything about. That's okay, just listen to Dustin, follow what he says, ignore everything else unless he tells you.
It's gonna have a bunch of stuff.
It's gonna be crazy.
But as a junior developer, if it is your goal at some point to get a job, you will be thrown into an environment with a bunch of stuff you don't understand, and someone will say, "Hey, work on this file."
Yep.
That would be the closest. You will almost never do what we're doing in this class, like setting up a new document or anything like that.
But it's good to know how to do that because then you can be like, okay, where is the index HTML file for this project? With React, it's doesn't matter where that HTML file is because it's all abstracted away into JavaScript land anyway. It's important when you're programming, though, to know what your entry point is. Entry point is a concept that's like, this is where the program starts. Once you can figure that out, you can start trailing where things are going when functions are being called. You can say, like, okay, where's this function? What does this do? What does this do? And just sort of like start digging your way through the plumbing of the code. I like to think of software engineering as a plumbing discipline, right? You're trying to get data from one end to the other. So I am a plumber. I clean the pipes so that the data can flow and not end up on your floor. Data on the floor, you don't want that. So for those at home, you're gonna go to learn how to install Node.js and follow the instructions on here. So you download Node.js and install Node.js. If you've installed Brew, you can use Brew to install NPM and Node.js. NPM comes with Node.js, so if you install Node.js, you will get NPM. And then next week, Dustin's going to show you how to use NPM to install React and start working with React, which is the web framework that Free Code Camp will teach, and we're going to teach, and we're going to use to build the grocery cart and inventory application for the Drake House. So action items for me this week, I'm going to set up a project on GitHub, and I will add the 4 or 5 people on the call, well, the 2 people on the call and the 3 people that usually show up in person, and we'll go from there.
So that I can look at it.
I'll push the changes to the application.
But next week, we're not be using. It's just so do that just so everyone knows, not just for you. We'll be switching to a brand new file. Or folder, rather.
Why are you still looking at node modules? It's not strictly true. For those online, how are you doing on installing Node.js? Any problems?
Can I know?
I assume so. Can you hear us online?
Too late to ask, but
It is a little late to ask. Oh boy. But yes, this is the basic add basic guestbook. Git push new origin app guestbook. Sherika, Amanda, are you doing okay on installing Node.js? Yeah, I know. It's better to ask. Amanda's working on it. Okay. Let us know if you run into any issues. Remember, we are on the Slack channel. So if you log into Slack, you can ask us questions there if you run into any issues. Usually it's just on Windows, it's pretty easy. You just hit next and yes. And if you install Brew, I know Sherika installed Brew, you can also install NPM that way. And that's a pretty easy way to install NPM and Node.js. No, remember, NPM and Node.js are almost the same program. They come with each other. They're bundled. So NPM allows you to grab React from a repository, and Node.js allows you to run JavaScript on your computer instead of in the browser. So questions, concerns?
so that we get started quickly next week, we're going to be running something called the PDX React Create React app.
Okay. Let's do that. Let me pull up my terminal. All right, where am I doing this?
You should do it on a new thing so it doesn't get made for the remote.
Okay, cool. So what do I type? I type npx.
Create React.
Let me make sure I'm sharing my screen. I stopped sharing for a second. Okay, I'm going to share the screen again.
And it's not dash, just create React.
Are you sure?
Yep.
But
On their website.
it's like this, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And it states and what you're going to call it. You're going to call it ./goat.
Goat trees.
That's the name of the app.
Yeah, it's for groceries. It's like goat trees.
Okay.
We'll call it grocery. Is it doing anything? It says it's running Node.
It's going to be doing a lot.
So it says it's running the Node process. Ooh, I need to install the following packages. Is it okay to proceed? I think it's okay. Please do not run into any C++ compilation problems. Please, please, please. I always get scared when I see the JavaScript installing things now because it's like, am I going to run into a Node JIT problem?
Sure. They can give you a prompt like that. I would say it doesn't look like it's done. But I would let Charlie look at that. It's like I'm not used to just saying that. It doesn't seem like it's finished.
So you can see where it says select that needs on, so if you hit enter.
See, yeah, that's what No, just you guys. No, states.
Wow. But if you look, anytime you click, it says lots of input.
You want to call it?
Okay, so it's still running, still creating things. And we'll show you a quick overview of the application, I guess, before we go. I'm just gonna show like what it looks like when you run it. Oh. I'm not gonna show them like, here's all the JSX, here's all the files, here's all the.
Jonathan just found the next lesson, you don't need to come.
I pushed up the app guestbook branch to the class notes repository. If you don't have access to it, let me know and I'll give you access to it. It's not a private repository, but you will need access to change things. Feel free to make it as pretty and nice and wonderful a guestbook application as you can make it. And I will help with any backend needs if you would like to save all the guestbook entries somewhere. I can do that. Because I have a home server. I can build Docker images, and I have my own repository now, so I can have private Docker images. I'm so excited about that. It's absurd. It's silly. I get excited about silly things sometimes.
Are you running?
Happy hiking. Oh no.
Okay. Now you can run. You can start.
No.
Let's say. Is he making version?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can end up there.
And then what would be there?
I don't do anything we can tell it to. No, that's, go back, that's your website.
What?
This is your website, right?
Wow.
This is your, it's so
beautiful.
You did a great job.
Great job. Wow.
So now you can do it.
Wait, can you also click on it and send it?
I thought you could. No, I just, so now open grocery. Is your on Windows? Is it still having that? No, I don't know. But there's been lightning fast. This is going on.
I'm sure it's a real house. And it's like a little sword fire.
It does have a really nice Wi-Fi already.
Yeah.
So if they have a nice Wi-Fi here. And you got a better image of it.
All right, so now you can run your terminal.
You did.
Go to, so do CD
Got
dot.
it. And now I'm correct. You can enter. So now you're gonna click on cluster app. So now it's high on NPX is our sharp and
Yeah,
this and create dash dash react. Sure. I see. That's what I'm saying. I don't understand how yours did so different.
I told you, because of this work card.
I only have one dot left. I only have, it's reifying.
Another line and has the same amount.
Right.
So I can go into app, I can do the space.
Oh,
So I can come back, app.
And then after the create React app, you
Oh, it is fine.
Right.
no, so it looks like it's installed Node, but not in.
Like I was talking to
Oh, then you're. I don't know that.
Maybe it's just-
Yeah, or uninstall.
I don't know where you.
Repair. Come on, React. Oh, it doesn't matter. It's fine.
Stuff like that.
Just do it when you're right to close it.
I can't remember.
There's like a ton of stuff. Is it having trouble
Yeah.
with memory?
Sorry.
GCTs.
It doesn't matter if it's.
So close that out. We're gonna close out everything here. Close tabs to the right. That should free up some memory. Close Edge. That's a whole nother browser. Close you. Is there a reason I need TypeScript that go with TypeScript by default now? Say what?
They don't think anybody like that template for you. That makes sense. It may just be the file system, like slowly figuring out how much. I've never seen this before. So maybe in the future,
But. Security.
I haven't ever read
Okay, yeah, so you may see at the end of this process, security vulnerabilities. Because React is so popular, it attracts a lot of security researchers, and I'm going to put this in quotes, security researchers. And what they do is they run bots that attack the React apps, right? So these are, if you put them online, they might get hacked. So don't put them online without, right. But just on your computer, there's network security in place to protect you from any hackers.
Oh, I'm that's why I was here. No, I don't have a set up my computer. I purposely skip that step. Because I don't have.
You don't like the backup dialog?
Back up to iCloud.
Where do you back up?
No. Unless I have like code that I back up to GitHub, but otherwise I don't back up anything.
Pictures or anything like that.
Nope.
Okay, so it looks like it's finally done. 9 minutes. Goodness gracious. Now it actually will. This is going to take another 5 minutes, isn't it?
I it's never taken me this long. It usually takes me like 2 minutes total to install all of this. Like the only reason I can think is our Macs have really advanced Wi-Fi cards. So here they have amazing Wi-Fi that can be only accessed by those types of cards.
Yeah, like Wi-Fi 6 or something.
Yeah, that would be the only thing I can imagine that's going on.
We'll see.
No.
It should.
Oh. That's fine, but that's not the whole. You can get it.
Like Marissa reached.
Happy hacking. Now I'm gonna go and do this command here. And this command here, you should be able to. I was able to.
In your console, is it saying that it's not a, how do you find out if humans install on, what command does it say where it is?
I don't know if there is a way. SS64 to the rescue.
Does it say it's not recognizing the X for
Where?
in her?
No, if you typed where, that's the
Oh,
alternative.
where, so put.
So the other alternative problem is that they may not have added it to the path. So I can help you fix that.
So just erase all one. One bag here. And do NPX. Says where. Or try to create the opposite, where. Then give you the error of it. Okay.
And and so the computer is higher variables. What this does is it loads in different different paths. So let's look at right. So it looks like good there. Okay, so what we probably need to do. Try it. Very good. What I'm doing is adding an JS program path to the path variable. So the added it for the system. Without this style, let's try. Shell where
Great.
you go. Okay, so everything is working now. So what was the problem with that? Okay. But I added it to your.
I'm glad we did this week. But knowing the difference.
I'd have been sitting here with you forever. So now I can do the NPX create back up. Sorry about that, that took so long.
They want NPX.
Since
Create. Dash. React. Space.
Okay.
Yeah, it's still failed. Thank you. Not a term was recognized. I literally have to do that at the end.
maybe I didn't do it. Let's see. I said document closure. Sometimes to reload environment variables, you have to close and reopen. And not just turn. I should be able to.
Either one is specific.
It doesn't matter. Just one that's like a separate thing. Space. Okay, it's a little, I didn't really do that.
Yes.
Yeah. I asked you if you want to do it.
Alright. Good. Next week I'll just have probably one. But this should make it much easier to make the thing that we made today.
Right. So if you have any trouble going forward, getting the Create React app going, please, please, please reach out in the Slack channel, the Learning How to Code Slack channel. Just do @channel or @here. We are available. It may not be an immediate response, but evenings and weekends are pretty good for responses. So I'll be checking all this week if you need help getting that Create React app stuff set up. And we'll move forward from there. Thank you all so much.